Welcome everyone on our panel.
Bartolome, can you hear us well here in Delft?
Yeah, we are. I'm hearing you quite well. Yeah, I hear you, and I hear also Ellen's voice, so I think it's okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So I think that we can start. It's 17 past 3, so it's high time for our panel. The topic of our panel is new hybrid teaching forms, and we have 4 panelists, distinguished panelists, who represent different approaches, different centers, not only in Europe but also in United States. So the first of our panelists is Günther, who will present the Austrian approach. We got Imon from Great Britain. We've got Jim from United States, and we see all Ellen, who is sitting in Delft. So welcome everyone. We've got the time limitation, like always. Only 45 minutes to discuss. That's why I suggest to do a short 2 rounds and leave some space for the questions from the audience. You can ask questions using chat, and I will try to leave some space for this discussion and to have a feedback from all panelists. And I would like to start from your experience on hybrid teaching forms. What is your experience? What is your attitude on this issue? Maybe we will start from Günther.
Okay, what is my experience? Well, my general experience with teaching is many years of in-person teaching, and then a pretty rough change, like probably for everyone, to online teaching. So within 1 week, I had to restructure my program, and funny enough, for a course that I've never taught before, so this was the first time, into an online version. It was a disaster at the end, I would say. Then this was 3 semesters of online teaching, and currently I'm teaching hybrid, where by hybrid I mean that I drive to the university. I'm in the classroom with about 12 to 15 students, and about 7 to 5 students are attending online. The experience with that is I think quite mixed. As a teacher, as a lecturer, I think it's positive to be in front of students, to see body language, to see immediate reactions, and you realize how complex communication really is. But I am really concerned about the students who are attending online, because and I think this applies for many other people. When I teach, I'm 100% concentrated on that, and I'm really focused on that. And I usually do not have the time or the ability to manage two different groups at the same time, and there's no one else but me to do this. And so I'm kind of afraid that I've really lost some of the students there, and more so than with online teaching. With online teaching, you concentrate with your limited abilities on the online students. With hybrid teaching, I think, or I'm afraid, I don't have the evidence yet. I'm afraid that there are a couple of people who are just left behind.
Thank you very much.
The upcoming challenge in this format will be the exam, and I don't really know yet how I will manage the exam with the online students.
Thank you very much, Günther. So let's move to England, to Iman.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I've enjoyed listening to the conference so far today. I've been unfortunately doing some other work at the same time, sitting in my office here at the University of Reading Henley Business School. In terms of my experiences of hybrid or blended learning, I mean, our university this term is operating a system whereby our core material is screencasted in advance, given to the students a week in advance, and then we have interactive sessions to consolidate the material which was in the screencasts. This is identical to what we did 12 months ago, but things have changed over time. Certainly the students this year are much less engaged with the screencasts. This time last year, I would have said from my postgraduate students, we had pretty much a 90% engagement with the screencasts. At the moment, I think we're looking at 20%. Undergrad, it's even worse. I think we're down to about 10% engagement with the screencasts. And the face-to-face sessions are absolutely full of students, which is great because I much prefer teaching face-to-face. I was teaching economics on Monday of this week at 3:45 in the afternoon, and the session was full. There wasn't a spare seat in the session. So what we've experienced this year is what worked last year isn't working in the current circumstances. We were essentially on this blended learning. Next term, we're pretty much going back face to face, but sort of hybrid, because we're hoping to be able to, if you like, record what we're doing live at the same time, and also allow students we use a system called Blackboard Collaborate, students who can't join us to join the face-to-face sessions that way. I've been doing that with one undergrad group this term because I had one student who had a permission from the university in the group to be online this term, not to return to campus. So I've done that very successfully, and I've recorded the lectures on Blackboard Collaborate as I've gone along, and the quality has been pretty good in terms of what we're doing. But I think what we've seen here certainly is the type of blended learning the university decided to go with hasn't worked as effectively as it did 12 months ago. The students are back on campus. They want more face-to-face. That's why we're moving to a de facto almost full face-to-face next term with recording of the lectures. They love the recording of the lectures, but they want face-to-face. They don't want online. And I think the screencasting, our experience has been that students don't want to see screencasts anymore. They're simply not engaging this term with the screencasts in the way in which they did last year. And I think part of the problem, I think certainly in the UK, has been the fact that students are paying a lot of fees. There was a OECD report which came out in September this year, and our undergraduates in the UK pay the highest level of fees in the developed world. And there's been a lot of negative publicity in the press about blended learning not being value for money. This has resulted in various Facebook, WhatsApp groups, parents complaining about it. The government at the beginning of this term came out and said, if you do not think you're getting enough face-to-face contact on your program, please complain to the Office for Students, basically. So there's been a policy driver, I think it's fair to say, against what we were doing last year. And I think if we were in a system like the colleagues in continental Europe, where fees are not so high, I think our students will be a lot happier. But because our students are paying a lot of fees, they want the face-to-face. And I think that's been part of the problem this year compared to last year. Last year, they seemed very happy and were quite positive about the experience. But this year, it's all about, we want more face-to-face. And then, of course, they want it recorded at the same time. So the hybrid model, I mean, we've worked successfully, just to give colleagues some ideas of what we did in Welcome Week this year for our MSc course, because we didn't really know how many people are going to be online and many people are going to be face-to-face. We ran our Welcome Week case studies using an OWL. I don't know how many of you have used an OWL. It's a webinar device that we had to buy, but it allows you to basically broadcast your webinar on Microsoft Teams, and you can get the questions coming in from the students. Subsequently, we've been using Blackboard Collaborate for that because you can see the questions. But I agree with Gunter, it's very hard to monitor both in the classroom, and particularly when, you know, the problem here is we might have 170 students in the classroom and 3 students online, and the 3 students online get neglected. I mean, the one thing we have discovered is that the vast majority of our students, even our overseas students, have arrived by now. So I think out of this year on my master's program, I have 175 students. I have only 3 students online at this stage, and they all will be with us in person by January. So hence the return to the face-to-face. But I think it's fair to say we have found right across the university, this is not just our programs. We had a meeting there last week with colleagues from several different schools. The level of engagement with the screencast this year has dropped off the cliff. I'm sure once there's an exam, they'll start engaging with this. But in this last year, you know, you could depend on the students having looked at the material before the interactive session. This year, it hasn't happened. As a test on Monday, for example, I asked 4 questions in my interactive session, the answers for which were all in the screencast, and I got no answers, basically. So there is just no engagement with the screencasts, but 100% engagement with the face-to-face is our experience at the moment.
Thank you very much, Iman. I think that fees are quite high also in the United States. Am I right, Jim? So let's move to Jim, and should I say good morning? Am I right?
Good morning to you all. I did sit on the earlier session too, so I was taught until 10 o'clock last night, so in person. So it's been a short night, but I've learned a lot. Fees are, even when fees are low, students are frustrated at times. But I think the experience that we've had here is sort of interesting. It's very similar to what Gunther and Eamon are talking about, insofar as students, at least at our graduate level students, want the in-person contact. However, the reality is that that doesn't work completely across the board. So we kind of wind up like this. I don't know if you've been in class yet. So this is, to me, is not in person, because we went to mask requirements for students up to about 3 weeks ago. So I'm 10 weeks into the semester, they start demasking, and I can't recognize any of my students because they all look the same from the eyes up, from the nose up. But it is interesting because they do really want that, especially at the graduate level, want that interaction and the personal side of it. What I did find, 2 things that might be helpful is sort of typical academic fashion. You have a crisis and you react, sort of, it's ready, aim, or shoot, aim. What I did this summer is I took a course on student engagement and high engagement type courses online for my traditional classes. And one thing I picked up that you might find useful is the use of discussion forums, which I think Blackboard has. And we also have that in Canvas. I hadn't used that before. So what I've done is I made them graded, and I have a new topic coming up, and I ask them 2 takeaways from the reading, and then they have to comment on somebody else's takeaway from the reading. And so what I can do is I get them engaged, and they start raising the bar on themselves because it's all open. Even though I grade it, I don't post their grades, but they can see each other's comments. And so they start engaging in advance and really was illuminating to me is that they didn't get the message I thought they were supposed to get when I started commenting. So I went back and commented on theirs. So I think ways of getting students sort of engaged, even if they're in person, because the demographic for our students is that most of them are working full time. They have a life and family, and they have limited time bandwidth for learning, et cetera. So getting them motivated to focus in on issues was a problem before, during, and after COVID. And I think the more that we can do to sort of get them engaged in participating in things, the better off we're going to be. And we can do that in an online form or in class. Like the rest of you, we wound up recording all our lectures, which is great because things happen with our students and they may miss something here, et cetera. When you get into technical materials, like we were talking about in an earlier session, Paloma was talking about, it's very nice for students to be able to stop us and to go back and look at step-by-step instruction. So I think sort of that kind of blended format is what we'll be using going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw that Gunther raised a hand, but right now, Ellen perspective, the Dutch perspective. Ellen, could you share with us your experience?
Yes, I will. Well, I think the previous stories are very recognizable, and also the commitment or the engagement with the online learning. I've got some teenage kids at home following online classes, and it's very interesting to see firsthand how this takes place. It's not with a very high level of commitment, I would say, indeed. And then the students are not to blame for that. So I think it's more than just the dissatisfaction with the high tuition fee, and there are also other elements in it. And I think what we experienced last year, that we at least have the face-to-face start of the year on which we could build on during the first outbreak of COVID, in which everybody thought that this would be just a matter of days, weeks, or months to survive. And I think now everybody is feeling a bit more, the fatigue is coming in. I think also in terms of planning our lectures and schedules, and so that also needs to take into account that it's much more tiring to be online than in face-to-face discussion in physical meetings. That brings me perhaps to my main point about the hybrid teaching forms. We need to professionalize in that, and we do it in a form of learning by doing. Haphazardly, some of us have the opportunity to spend some more time taking courses on it as well, but I think both for the teachers and for the students, we need to learn how to master the skills needed to do so, to make it effective and make it working, and make it also a pleasant way of learning. And that has to do not just with the skills that you need to be able to do so, but it is also a bit related to the stuff, the equipment that you need, and also taking into account that perhaps not everybody's equipment is up to full standards, what you would expect. So also in those terms, it would be interesting to take into account, well, what are the means that the various groups of students might have to access the online experience. With regards to opportunities and threats, I would say for this online experience, I think also especially with our teaching, which has to do with the built environment, with real estate. I think not just having the interaction with each other, with the allowing us opportunities for tacit learning as well, learning from each other in a more tacit way. There's also the matter of excursions, getting out there, getting the look and feel of real estate and what it's like and how it works, and having people, professionals, for example, interviewing them in their own habitat with their own buildings and showing us and students around. I think also those experiences have become much more limited, making it more abstract or theoretical that the students are learning about and engaging with. And I think perhaps a third point that we need to consider is that we there are different types and styles, I think, of personality and teaching and learning, both amongst our students and the teachers as well. So we also have to adopt that, besides the general lessons about the ways in which we can facilitate this online teaching and deliver the online teaching and learning. It also has to do with, well, what works for you in a particular way. And I think that will also take some time for us to be familiarized with, and also to listen to the feedback of the students, also in terms of, well, what works and what doesn't work. And I think especially these feedback moments are very directly when you are teaching in classroom, but when you're online teaching, you miss out a lot of the feedback. So I think also the organizing the feedback moments is very essential in this online setting.
Thank you very much, Ellen. You started to answer for the second question, which I wanted to ask you about this positive and negative strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats of hybrid learning, and different perspective, both students and teacher. And Günther starts and mention about, for instance, some maybe not the negatives, but some threats, that it's very often hard to be concentrated in the same way for the students which we see right now in our classroom, and in the same time be concentrated on the students which are online. Günther, do you have some other opinion about these two aspects of it, and also some weaknesses, also some threats of hybrid model? You mentioned also about examination. This is very also interesting, I think.
Yes. Well, actually, I would like to take a few steps back from that and say that I'm not sure that hybrid teaching is really that interesting a topic. What does that mean? I think we started hybrid teaching when we wrote the first textbook and put it on a reading list. There are two sources of information: the written book and the interactive part. And from that, looking at that, I see that, or I would conclude and say that, well, it probably also with the online things and the electronic media, it will not be one or the other, but we'll have to find a combination of things, and we'll have to find the best combination of these topics and means and media. So I think the overall topic is really digitalization. And the pandemic experience was a big move in that direction. We use digital storing devices, digital elements, much more now than we did 2 years ago. That's really how I see it. I think that at the end of the day, when we go down to the basics, we are in an interactive business, and we are communicating tacit knowledge. And we see from what Iman had said that students realize that this tacit element is essential and is essential for learning, and that that in that respect, I think we're in pretty safe profession in terms of the future, but still we need to implement elements like that. We'll probably have to implement, or we have to implement those which are to our benefit, like overcoming distance more easily. At Modul University, where I teach now, this is a small private university in Vienna, which has a lot of international students, a lot of students from countries where students have visa issues to get into Austria, because there are some bureaucrats in I don't know which damn ministry, but who think that they are more qualified to decide whether this person should come to Vienna to attend our university than we are. So these students sit at home and say, I'm still waiting for my visa. I think we've learned now ways to integrate them into courses. That's part of the online students. I think we probably have to find ways, and probably better ways, to keep those in there. Some of the online students are probably students that otherwise would sit in the back row and don't pay attention anyways. So I think the different groups there. The one thing that I'm still waiting for, and that I have not seen yet, maybe I have not looked enough, is the killer application for online teaching and for hybrid teaching. So these technologies are developing over time, and maybe in a month, maybe in half a year, maybe in 10 years, we'll have the application which allows us to integrate all of that. But these are the challenges, I think. But we have to face them. So there's no way back. No way back.
Thank you very much. Iman, please go ahead. I feel that you want to say something.
No, I agree with a lot of Gunter has said, because I think it's about this much wider process of the digitalization of teaching and learning. And we've all had essentially a baptism of fire, including the students. It's been too rapid. I think one of the big issues, I think, as to why the students are, at least our students, are probably not engaging as much as they did this time last year. I think, unfortunately, this whole thing is associated with lockdown and being in lockdown. And the whole COVID pandemic. And I think also it's an issue of professionalization. I agree with Gunter that the platforms we're using are okay, but they're not great. All the things we do, we could do better. And I think if this was to move to a much more professional type platform with higher quality, I think the reaction of the students will be somewhat different. I mean, in the next panel, we're going to talk about that. So watch this space, but certainly, I think I'm certainly going to be involved next term in producing a course, basic introduction to real estate on Future Learn, which is this sort of all singing, all dancing platform I haven't seen yet. But I think one of the big problems is the experience hasn't been good for the students, or it's been associated very much with being locked down and the whole trauma of the pandemic. And I think that's part of the problem. If we digitized on our own pace, and somebody said, I think in one of the other sessions, we've done in 18 months what we would do in 10 years. There's a negative to doing it in 18 months. It's been too rushed. It's been not as organized as it could be. And students essentially and staff have been forced onto platforms they wouldn't have been on otherwise. And I think that's part of the problem. The very rapid nature of what we've had to do has created problems and perceptions of blended learning and digitization. And there are lots of positives. I mean, I'm accentuating the negatives today. I've got lots of positives from this process. I think some of our modules actually work better, even though the students mightn't see it in a blended learning format. There's lots of things that we do, like verbal feedback, which we weren't doing, which work so much better for the students because they get much more impact than they would in terms of purely written feedback. I think there's also issues in terms of drop-in sessions are so much easier to organize. Meetings with students are so much easier to organize. And again, the few students which haven't been able to join us from abroad, they're not at the disadvantage they would have been because they've been able to participate, maybe not fully participate in what's going on. Another point I want to sort of pick up, and it's from a Dutch colleague. I agree, the real world is very important for real estate, and I'm very glad that this term we were able to take students on field trips in London. We've just done a field trip for 185 students, 3 days in Manchester, and that's kept the lid on things. That's kept students who would be, I think, very grumbly at this stage because of their experience are a lot less grumbly because we've been able to bring them out of the classroom. We couldn't do that last year. I produced an entire cohort of real estate students for the industry, which never saw the inside of a building throughout the entire year. So I think it's important that if we are with the blended learning, that we're able to do those sort of things as well, basically, that we can actually get them the real world experiences. And it's, I think, as some students said to me, compensated for the fact that they're still looking at screencasts. I think that's part of the issue. And don't get me wrong, I mean, the survey, when we survey students, they want to be able to replay the lecture. There's no doubt about that. They like that bit, but they want to deliver it live. And I think that's the sort of way in which the universities haven't fully understood. And indeed, our university has plans to eventually, in about 2 or 3 years' time, be delivering about 1/3 of its modules in a blended learning format. Well, unless the student attitude changes, that's not going to happen. Or the quality of what we're doing changes, is not going to happen. So that's some observations from me.
Thank you very much. I would right now we got 11 minutes to finish our panel. So thank you for the first questions via chat. But before we deal with these questions, we move to States right now to Jim. Jim, do you have any comments on Imon or Gunther?
I guess I'd like to pull a Gunther on you and switch the topic a little bit, because if you think about it, and gathering my thoughts, we have sort of before COVID, during, and after. But if you look at it, this was sort of an event that triggered and may have accelerated something that was inevitable anyway. I wrote an article a couple years ago on big data and how it would disrupt the real estate industry, et cetera. I think we're dealing with in disruption of academics, the academy. We have big content. We have new topics, ESG, global warming, equity, capital, environment, all sorts of things that we didn't deal with before. And at the same time, we have the emergence of data science and new tools and techniques, et cetera. And so what we're being asked to do by industry is prepare students for the future. Most of our research is explaining what happened in the past, but to get more future oriented, we're going to need to take advantage of the technological innovations and the new platforms and more collaboration and the more interdisciplinary approaches where we can start building, expanding real estate scope of what we do in the classroom without cannibalizing fundamentals. And that'll be the challenge. We still have to teach the blocking and tackling, but now we're getting into, do you teach students how to code in R or Python, or if not, can they not be data scientists? And I think we're seeing new software emerge. I talked last year about Tableau and Alteryx and some other packages that are sort of drag and drop. But the problem is that we could learn that and teach it to our students, but we don't have the bandwidth or the resources to do it. So the academy itself is not set up for innovation, the reward structure system, et cetera, but that's something we have to do or we're going to be left behind and we won't be training the leaders of the future because we're not getting them ready for the expanded scope of what real estate is all about. And I think that's where this